You're watching BCTV. We're all about Branford. You're watching BCTV, Branford Government Television, a service of Branford Community Television. This program is brought to you in part through the support of the town of Branford.
Okay, we're going to get started for the Board of Finance for Thursday, March 20th, continuation of the public budget hearings for fiscal 25-26. And before we get started with departmental presentations, I'm just going to provide an overview. There's $144,457,798 being requested from all the departments, town and Board of Ed. That equates, after revenues are applied, to $124,246,000 being raised from taxation, which with a revalued grand list of $5.597 billion, that equates to a mill rate of 22.69 at this point. The Board of Finance will be, after tonight's public hearings are closed, we'll be meeting on the 31st of March in order to recommend a budget to the RTM. The RTM will deliberate, and they're meeting on finalize the budget and the expenditure side of the budget on May 13th. The Board of Finance will meet on May 19th, and they will make any adjustments based on the RTM's review of the expenditures. The Board of Finance will finalize the revenues and any application of fund balance and set the mill rate. With that, we'll get started with the presentation by Willoughby Wallace Memorial Library, page 52.
You gotta use the hand mic though.
Hi. Thank you for having me. For those who I didn't meet in the fall when mic would be helpful.
I think it's on.
Hi again. For those who I didn't meet in the fall when I came to one of your last meetings, I'm Jennifer Sullivan. I am the new director of the Willoughby Wallace. And I think you all know that this is my first budget presentation, so thank you again. So for this year, I am requesting $299,959, which you know is an increase, slightly larger increase of 7.3% over this current year. Among the line items, I kept many the same as this current year's budget, while there are a few small increases due to costs also increasing. The largest increase is the library part-time staff line. So I'm asking for a 25% increase of that. So there are two reasons. One is very positive. We are busier than we were over a year ago, and looking back at the post-COVID years, every year it's gotten busier, both physical circulation, electronic circulation, and actual people walking in and out of the building is higher. So with that, you need more people to help the people. The second reason, upon my arrival last spring, I was a little surprised to see that there are many times in the building where people were working alone. So that's not safe, both for the staff, the patrons, and the town as a whole. So there were a few minor incidences that made me rethink our staffing levels and our scheduling. And upon discussion with both the first selectman and the director of human resources, we decided to implement 2 staff members on at all times when we're actually open to the public. To fill any gaps, I increased hours for some positions and I brought on additional staff. So to continue this level of staffing, I will now need an additional $20,250 over last year's part-time staff line.
Jennifer, how many staff do you have now, part-time and full-time?
So full-time is just myself and one other person, and then for part-time we have, I think right now we have 7. Yes, 7.
And that equates to an FTE, so you have 2.
So the
full-time
the FTE is, I will tell you that.
part-time.
Yeah, I do have that. On one of the pages. Oh, there we go. So our FTE is 4.35, which is well beneath the state average of 7.5.
So you're at 4.35 now?
Yes.
And what are you looking to go to for part-time?
I'm looking to keep that with the 20,000 added in.
But that would increase, if it's more time, that would add to this FTE?
I don't believe the way we're staffing it now, we would be adding any additional hours. I think we are, if we keep what we have right now, which I've added in.
Why don't you check with HR?
Actually, just to clarify.
Yeah, I was gonna say you can.
Because, Joe, we have been, so right now, she is staffing to have those 2 people
Correct.
online. So it wouldn't be an increase.
Oh.
So mid-year, after she evaluated, there were a couple minor incidents.
Okay.
She came.
So you're already at 4.35?
Correct.
This is the fully
I want to
funded for next
keep
year.
that. Yes, exactly.
Now, so how do you get through this year with your budget?
Sadly or not sadly, I have somebody out on leave right now, so that is
Okay.
helping a little bit. And I may be back before the end of this year to ask for a transfer if we.
Okay, you don't have to. Okay, so
we'll see.
you're looking to have basically 6.35 FTEs for next year, including the 2 full-time plus the 4.35 part-time.
Believe so, yeah.
Well, I think the 4.35 is part-time.
So no, the 4.35 is full-time equivalent. But I don't recall, actually that was with last year's staffing prior to me adding in. So I wouldn't necessarily call it 6.35 because it's still adding on 2 part-timers. And they aren't full-time even with their hours added up. So I don't know, 5.5?
Okay, I'll leave it at that. Pam, you got any questions?
No, I get it.
Anybody else on the board have any questions on this request? Questions from the audience, RTM members? Okay, I think we're all set. Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Next is James Blackstone Memorial Library, page 51.
That's true. Great.
Welcome.
Thank you. Okay. Good evening, Board of Finance members. Thank you so much for the opportunity to present the Blackstone Library budget. I'm Katie McNichol, Library Director. With me is Kathy Oxalita, our Business Manager, Janice Kochanowski, our Board President, and Larry Greenberg, our Treasurer. For fiscal 2026, the Blackstone Library's total budgeted expenses are $2,006,500, a 2.67% increase over last year. Unlike the other town departments you review, our budget is our total operating budget, including salaries, employee benefits, materials for the collection, utilities, building and grounds maintenance and repair, and insurance.
Question, do we have the detail for this?
I had,
Actually, we just, that
We
was,
just
that
emailed
was
it to
on
you.
us. We just emailed it, so.
I brought
Okay.
copies,
Good.
You did bring copies?
just in case.
That's terrific. If you have, that'd be helpful.
Thank you.
Down.
Mr. Chairman, could the RTM have a copy of the details, please?
Not right now, but it's, we're looking at it, but you will get it. This is one page? Is that what this is?
Yes.
There's some extras you can give to the RTM.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
There you go. Okay. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
You want to start from the top again?
Sure. So for fiscal 2026, the Blackstone Library's total budgeted expenses are $2,006,500, a 2.67 increase over last year. Our budget is our total operating budget, which includes salaries, employee benefits, materials for the collection, utilities, building and grounds maintenance and repair, and insurance. Consistent with the last few years, we are requesting 89.2% of the library's operating budget amount from the town in the amount of $1,789,500, which is an increase of $46,000 over last year, or 2.64%. The highlights of the fiscal 26 budget request are salaries, which total $1,071,111. That reflects an increase of $24,334. We followed the town's directive for unaffiliated employees, increasing full-time rates by 2.75% and part-time rates by 2.25%. The employee benefits and insurance increased by $17,059, reflecting actual employee enrollment combined with an estimated increase in the cost of health insurance as recommended by the Connecticut Insurance Commissioner. The materials of the collection remains unchanged from last year at $112,000. This amount supports print materials, plus streaming services and digital licenses for ebooks and audiobooks that we lend. Our utilities total $65,027, and that's an increase of $4,000, reflecting an anticipated increase in electricity costs. And we do participate in the town's electricity and gas buying program. Costs are just simply going up across the board. Our repairs and maintenance totals $85,000, and that reflects an increase of $6,000. This includes contractual costs for maintaining the library building and grounds, as well as repairs and maintenance. As our building ages, we are focused on maintaining our historic and iconic building for the community to enjoy. And then insurance for the library totals $45,000, reflecting an increase of $5,000 over last year. Commercial property insurance has risen nationwide, and our insurance premiums have increased as well. This adjustment reflects the increase in premiums for coverage for the library building and personal property. And then the total of all other expenses reflects the appropriate adjustments made in accordance with spending last year and the first 6 months of this fiscal year. On the income side, along with the Town of Branford operating grant, budgeted income includes fees from printing and lost materials, auditorium rentals, grants, donations, direct appeals, and fundraising events for a total of $122,500. And we are proposing a withdrawal from the endowment of $92,500, which represents a 2.25% increase over last year. That's in accordance with the commitment by the town administration, Board of Finance, RTM, and the library to ensure a sustainable endowment. Those are the highlights of the operating budget request. For the capital request,
Why don't we just pause for a second?
Sure.
Yeah. Questions on the operating side of the Blackstone presentation?
I'm good, Joe.
Members of the RTM? Frank Tuhol, you have a question?
I do, Mr. Chairman. Should I stand here?
Sure, you can stand there.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So,
You have to hold the mic up.
okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So anyway, I just wanted to ask a question about the RTM sinking fund that was started for the Blackstone, I believe in 2021, which is $30,000 a year that you receive, extra for the sinking fund, which is supposed to be for the, the structure, the old beautiful building, the marble building, plus the grounds. So I believe the sinking fund that you've gotten so far equals about $120,000. So I just wanted to know if there's anything left of that, and would you please give us some idea of the, all the different activities that you've spent.
Frank, we'll cover that under capital, but yes, they're going to make that presentation. So, other questions on the operating side of the budget?
I just
A quick question on the fundraising going down. Is there less fundraising we're doing, or is that somewhere else?
The expenses have gone down. I believe you're pointing to the line.
63,200?
Yeah. We had budgeted for some donor appreciation events last year. We've found some ways to save some money and scale that back, so that just reflects some changes in some of the expenses of the fundraising events. But the overall, those expenses get applied against the income from the fundraising events in line 43500.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. So it doesn't mean we're doing less fundraising,
Correct.
we're just doing it.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, other questions on the operating side? Okay, if not, we'll move on to page 62 of the capital presentations, and that's where the Blackstone Library Sinking Fund is there, Frank.
Yes.
So, Kathy.
Okay. So, yeah, for the sinking fund, we are requesting this year $40,000 for that sinking fund. The requested amount is contingent on needs for technology replacements and upgrades and the building repair. The uses of that sinking fund will be subject to the town's regular oversight procedures.
Okay, questions on the sinking fund contribution of $40,000 for fiscal '26 from the board? Okay, questions from the audience? Frank, you have a question?
I do, Mr. Chairman. Yes, so anyway, so the question is, as I said before, since 2021, when it was started, 30,000 then, I believe you've received about 120,000 in the sinking fund. As I said before, it's to be used for, the beautiful marble structure repairs, as well as outdoor, landscaping work. So my question is, in that account that you have, in that fund from the RTM and the Board of Finance, is there anything left right now at present? And would you tell us some of the things you've spent the money on over the years, please?
Sure. So just going back to the first couple of years of the sinking fund, 2021, 22, the approved amounts were $35,000 in those years. In 23 and 24, the approved amounts were $30,000. Right now, we have a total balance of about $87,000 from that original total amount. In the first couple of years, there were amounts earmarked for different uses. Every year we asked for a little bit for technology upgrades and the balance for building contingency. I believe in the first year or two, there was a request also for strategic plan initiatives. So breaking those down, there was a total approved amount for technology upgrades of $45,000, of which just about $21,000 has been spent. For the strategic plan initiatives, there was an earmark of $19,000, of which $15,900 has been spent. There's a balance of about $3,000 left. And then for the building contingency, there's a total of $66,000 approved. To date, we've spent $5,900, and there's a balance of about $60,000 left for that. For the technology upgrades, every year we replace some of our computers on a rolling basis. The library has about 25 to 30 public computers that are used every day. We have staff computers that are heavily used. So we use the technology sinking funds to replace and upgrade computers. We have upgraded our phone system in the last couple of years. For the strategic plan initiative, we recently redid our website. That was last done in 2012, so it was due. And part of our strategic plan initiative was to make the library more welcoming, make the website easier for people to access and find the things that they need. So we think the new website has done that. That remaining $3,000 will go to this first year of the website making any final tweaks to make sure we're getting the right website that we need. And then various things have been done over the years for the building. I don't have those specifics, but last month I came before the Board of Finance and we talked about some of the things that this building is starting to face as it ages, and we are in the process of coming up with a plan to address kind of these long-standing issues and figuring out the funding for that. Some of that might come out of the sinking fund. It really depends on what the plan, our facilities plan, finds.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Katie.
Other questions on the capital request? Okay, you're all set. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is elections, page 22. Welcome, Jeff.
Good evening. My name is Jeff Rohn, one of the registered voters here in town. My counterpart, Aaron Waller, is unable to be with us today since he is out of state. Filling in for him is Peter Black, who is the deputy registrar. And also, I want to thank you very much for rescheduling us from Tuesday till today.
Sure. If you'd like to go over, there's a request here, $377,518, an increase of $89,231. Most of the increases are on the personnel side.
Right. The big expense, a lot of it was early voting, which hopefully we will not be having a primary in late summer, but it's possible. So the state, of course, currently mandates a week for the primary, which may happen, and of course we have the 2 weeks for the municipal in November, and that is a good chunk of change, which we spent this past year. We had 3 of them in the last, not budget year, but it was part of the last budget year in this current one, and so a good chunk of that goes to filling in 7 days or 14 days of people here actually at the community house for 14 days straight.
So that comprises the 80,000?
No, that's under the election workers section. That's the one that went up 50%. We are also requesting for the deputy registers an increase because both of them are now certified as registrars. So we felt that they should be getting something a little extra for them being able to fill in, which Peter has in the past. And also, let's see, what's the next one is, overtime. I know is a big chunk because all 4 of our workers, the 2 assistants and the 2 deputies, put in a lot of extra overtime, again, early voting and having the 2 elections part of this current budget year, but also the one we had, the presidential preference primary last spring. So that was a lot of overtime that they had to put in to cover for that.
Okay, thank you. You know, there was a question that some of the board members had with regards to the elected officials, and I know that Jamie had talked to council. Jamie, can you expand on that a little bit for us?
Yes. So part of the request too is the, as you know, for the elected officials, we vote on, we pass the resolution, or the Board of Finance and the RTM, the appropriated bodies, act on the resolution setting their salaries and increases for the period of their term. The registrars are currently just in the mid of a 2-year term. So last budget cycle, the town adopted the resolution. Since brought to my attention and that there may be some statutory limitations in the adjustments that can be made midterm as it pertains to elected officials. So I did reach out to the town attorney to get his opinion on this action that is before you with the elected registrars. That's with the elected positions. I will also note that you have a large increase with the election workers. Clearly, as Jeff has just stated, we know that this year there was a lot more time required with early voting. However, this coming year, the election workers will be paid through HR, through our payroll system. And I know the HR director has been reaching out to the registrars to kind of have an understanding of the amount of personnel and the type of payments that will be made to fill these positions. And I think that matter is still outstanding.
Are those W-2 positions?
Yes, yep.
They're W-2 positions?
Currently they're 1099s, but they will be moving to a W.
They moved the W-2.
That's a movement too.
Okay. That's cleaner.
Right.
Well, if I may, Mr. Chair, there's actually an IRS ruling on the matter for election workers that they should be paid through W-2s. So
When did that come in effect?
Would we really want to know?
No, but you were on a raise it, so. Counselor. I'm just a CPA, so that's
It was about 2001, I think. It was a long time ago.
Enough.
We've been, as you may be aware, part of this was pushed because of them going to early voting, so, it's a less sporadic thing, but there actually was a bright line ruling on it from the IRS some time ago. And I think still up in the air is whether there's a Social Security liability for the town. I think HR thinks there's not, but the ruling expects Social Security to be paid by the town for the election workers. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Questions on this budget, the operating budget at this point?
No.
Questions from the audience or ITM members? Tracy, you have a question?
Frank.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tracy Everson, District 5. On the registrar's salary increase, I know you mentioned that the council has been asked. The previous RTM did an extensive review of the salaries for the registrars of voters, and we asked them to please come back and tell us what the impact might be to review this. And now there's a substantial increase in here that has not come to the RTM, has not come through the Board of Finance, but it's in the budget. So that's kind of my question is, how did we get here?
Specifically, you're asking a question about why the increase in the salaries, or?
Yeah, the $22,375 is significant. That was never something that has been approved by the.
Right, it's being presented now. Their current budget is $63,925 for that line item. So, yeah, that's where we're asking questions, and we'll get some input from HR and from the Selectman's office for our deliberations on the 31st. And then if there's more information that comes to light during the RTM process, that's fine.
Yeah, because usually these are done prior to elections.
Correct.
So it's a little unusual.
Yep, thank you. Other questions or comments with regards to this elections budget? Okay, thank you. Next up is school-age childcare, page 63. Good evening.
I'm Lauren Scoltetti. I'm the Director of Early Childhood.
The microphone.
Welcome. Use that mic. Go ahead. Start again.
Hi, I'm Lauren Scoltetti. I'm the Director of Early Childhood for Branford Schools. So next year's budget, the percent increase is requested at 3.3 with an amount of $20,147. Our SAC program currently, for this school year, we have 150 students that we serve from pre-K through grade 6. That represents approximately 130 of our pre-K 6 families. Our summer program for this year currently has 51 families that we'll be supporting. We are staffed with 17 staff members. Almost all of them are part-time. The program runs from 7 until the bell rings, so that's different at Walsh versus the elementary schools. And then the afternoon program runs from dismissal until 6 o'clock for the K-6 kids. Next year, we are proposing to have a SAC program at Indian Neck for our pre-K students, so that pre-K does not get bumped or bused over to Tisco or Sliney or Murphy, and they can stay where the playground is more developmentally appropriate and they're familiar with the staff. So we would have that program from 7:30 until 5:30, obviously minus school hours. So next year, we're hoping to expand. We are planning for a tuition increase across all of the programs, pre-K and K-6, with different levels of increase for the pre-K kids, given that the hours are different. We are intentionally drawing from our fund balance to support our implementation of our full-day pre-K model that is starting as of next school year. Let's see, what am I missing? Yeah, I think that's it.
Thank you. Question, what's the fund balance? Balance of the fund balance?
I should bring my glasses.
It's just shy of $500,000.
Okay. And so this is, would you anticipate this application year after year at this point, or this is the first year in order to kick it?
For an overdraw?
Yes.
This is a one-time overdraw, and it'll likely be less than this with the tuition increase that Lauren proposed at the time from this budget being built.
Okay. So we're showing revenues of $633,857 and expenditures of the same amount, $633,857, with an increase of $20,000 on the expenditure side, an increase of $78,000 on the revenue side, in order to balance it, I guess. Questions from the board?
Just what is the tuition?
So the tuition right now, it varies depending on the
Economics of the family?
No, depending on the number of days that the children come, depending on whether or not they have a second or third child in the program. Military families, school staff are also given a discount, so there's a whole bunch of different reasons why it might change. So next year, our increase reflects a consistent hourly rate per child, where that is not the case this year. So I can certainly give you the numbers for next year,
that's fine.
but right now, this year, they're a little bit different. My stuff's back there. So approximately $9 per hour per child. So for the morning, you're looking at about an hour and 45 minutes. And in the afternoon, you're looking at 2.5 hours. So we're offering next year a 3-day and a 5-day option. This year there are options for 2, 3, 4, and 5 days, as well as drop-ins, and that we're going to streamline for next year so that we can have more predictable staff day-to-day, and also have more consistent, just the kids in general come to rely on, being there or not, as opposed to some kids are here 1 day or 2 days, and it becomes quite challenging for staff at the sites to keep track.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
What'd you do, Harry?
They shut me off.
There we go. Other questions from the board on this budget?
Okay.
Questions from RTM members? We have this You have to identify yourself and speak into the mic.
Mary Ann Amori, RTM District 4. I just have a question about the impact of the tuition hikes and the changes in schedule. Do you have feedback? Were you able to test this? I mean, childcare is such an enormous issue for parents, and it's not getting easier. What information do you have about the doability of this for the parents that you currently have?
So far, the parents that we've already got families asking about next year's program, and the feedback from them as they've received the new rates and the new hours has been nothing other than positive. We did make some adjustments to summer hours for this coming summer. We looked at last year's attendance for each week and when our families needed us the most. So they were open at 7 last year, and very few kids came. So that we're shifting everything back to reflect more of the hours when our kids were there.
So you're using a data loop?
Correct.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Okay, another question, John.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. John Hartwell, RTM 5. Could we go back over the revenues lines for just a moment, please? Because we're showing a draw from the fund, the general fund, balance forward, 107,000 plus, and then a decrease in tuition. And I think I heard you ask, Mr. Chairman, if that is going to be a one-time thing, this draw from the fund. I'm trying to understand what is the business case here for taking money out of the fund to support basically operations, and how does that, what do you see going forward? Maybe
Blaze, you use the mic.
Yeah, I can take that first thing.
Yeah,
Hey, John. Yeah, good question. So yeah, it's so just for clarity, the budgeted tuition revenue is really, you can see the actuals in 24 versus what they were budgeted in for 25. So I think they were a little overstated in 25 from actual. So Lauren's team did a good job of really projecting an accurate number. And then since then, we're planning on doing the tuition increase. So the overdraw, I think, will be less, but this is very conservative based on that. The overdraw on the fund balance is to offset the increase in 1 year as we absorb the additional expenses of the program, so that the increase would be mitigated. The fund balance has a healthy fund balance in it. This is the SAC fund balance, not the general fund. And so we're also thinking about Indian Neck campus and moving the child care so we have FRC fund, which is on the Board of Ed side. We have the SAC fund, and then we have pre-K off the general fund. The new thing for this year is Lauren's position's new, and we've consolidated everything down at Indian Neck. And so now we're kind of viewing those instead of separate individual entities. We're kind of starting to view those as one service at one campus, since we're largely serving the same population. And so there's kind of always this constant in between FRC and SAC. And so you're starting to see that the goal here would be, in our budget book, you kind of see this triangle of bringing all these funds together and creating an early childhood center. And so that's probably the different way that we're viewing managing the funds, instead of the 3 silos that they've previously been in.
Thank you. Fund management is one of the things that we talk about a lot. And the more transparency there is about how much is in and what's happening and how much is going to be there at the end would be very helpful. I understand that all of that is under your purview, those funds, but still, in order to inform us as we make decisions about the overall budget for the school system in general, the more information we have, the better off we are.
Yeah, I think we, as part of this too, so currently FRC is, the fund balance is under the Board of Ed, and then the SAC fund is under the town, and then likely the SAC fund balance will stay exactly the same structure, same rules, same charter, same budget structure, but it will come under the Board of Ed. And then I think in our next version, we can include a net fund balance impact of the budget on the budget page.
That'd be very helpful.
Yeah,
Thank you.
we can do that.
Okay. battery's getting low here. Other questions on this budget? If not, thank you. Next up is adult education on page 62. Have a total request of $72,500, revenues and expenditures. Welcome.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I am Christine Bjork. I am the Director of Shoreline Adult Education. Shoreline offers both academic programs, things like high school diploma, GED, ESOL, English for Speakers of Other Languages, and Citizen Prep, and enrichment classes. And tonight we're here to talk about our enrichment budget, which is a self-funded program. This year we have offered 149 classes and 794 community members have participated. So for next year we are asking for a budget of $72,500, which is a 2.3% increase. And changes come in the salary line. We have an increase of $1,700, and that's to accommodate a new site assistant to help with people entering the building and where they're going, and the new safety procedures at the high school. We also increased the benefits line a little bit, and that's to accommodate the new site assistant. $400 for increase for printing and postage, and again, that just goes to the usual increases that happen every year in costs. And then an increase in the membership at conferences so that our enrichment coordinator can attend the adult ed conference next year. To offset that, we have decreased the purchase services line by $3,000, and that line is what pays our instructors. They are all independent contractors, and so that is based on past data and current expenditures for this year. We've also just did a slight decrease in mileage, and that is because there's less traveling between different sites this year.
Okay, thank you. Questions from the board on this budget? Request $72,500. All right, Christine, you're all set. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is Board of Ed. Welcome, Peter. Welcome, Christopher.
Good evening. Thank you. So we were pleased to return. Please, could I start this? Good evening, Chairman Mooney, members of the Board of Finance. Thank you for considering the proposed budget of the Branford Board of Education for the 25-26 fiscal year, Waves of Opportunity. The proposed operating and capital budgets reflect the commitment to providing Branford students, faculty, and staff with the resources necessary to achieve the strategic goals of equal opportunity and growth for all, supporting students in acquiring global learning competencies, and improving the district communications with all stakeholders. The proposed budget seeks an appropriation of $640 million. A significant driver in the increase, slightly over 1%, is special education costs, a portion of which is eligible for state reimbursement. The net proposed increase, after considering the state reimbursement, is 4.6% to the taxpayer. The BOE has been mindful of the guidance provided by the town and the Board of Finance when considering its long-term obligations, such as union contracts, as well as the development of this budget. While the percentage increase is slightly above the guidance the Board of Finance provided, any reduction in the proposed budget beyond the 1.2% reduced by the BOE will have programmatic impacts. Dr. Tranberg in his presentation will provide more details on the budget drivers and the reallocation of existing resources to improve educational outcomes. You will note the capital budget proposes a significant increase in outlying years. The proposal is a placeholder to telegraph to you that the BOE anticipates significant building improvement requirements, particularly at the high school, and the redistricting and reorganization of our elementary schools and early learning program. The BOE has assembled a committee to develop a master facilities plan, and we are fortunate to have Chairman Mooney active in its participation. The placeholder and timing will be refined as our community navigates through the planning process. This year, the revised format of the budget book and presentation, in furtherance of the third goal of improving communication, attempts to provide a more relatable and understandable document from which the board and other stakeholders can evaluate and make decisions. A final note, thanks to Chairman Mooney and the entire Board of Finance, First Selectman Cosgrove, and Finance Director Finch. The BOE greatly appreciates your collaboration and support during the budget cycle and throughout the year. Thank you.
You need to.
Is this okay?
No, you need them both. This is for the room, and that's for the cable.
All right. I'll start by just saying thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'll echo the thanks to the town Board of Finance, to First Selectman and Director of Finance. We appreciate the partnership and the open conversation we have throughout this process. Quick thank you speech to the Board of Ed, who have been incredibly supportive. My admin team, under the leadership of Jim O'Connor, who's the BAO president, who's here tonight. The central office team, so Kim Castoro, who's our Director of Business Services. Patrick Lays, we partnered with him. He is not one of our district employees, but he helped us in preparation for this budget. Connie Turkington, our Director of HR, Carrie Irick, my assistant, and Maria Casais, Blaze's assistant, are just all very important to this process, as well as Cabinet, which includes Blaze, and Allison Moran, Assistant Superintendent, and Charles Ciccarella, who's our Director of Student Services, who's also here. So it's always dangerous to name people because then you forget someone. So Brendan is also here, our Director of Facilities, and I'm sure I still forgot someone else, but I'll keep moving, because every time I do that, I forget somebody. This is just a quick overview of what we'll cover tonight. So some background information, demographics, the budget itself, and just talking about some of the investments and a summary of where we are, how we got here, and why. I named the budget this year after not naming it. I think next year I just said it's the Getting Better budget. This year it's Waves of Opportunity, a connection to my life as a Jersey boy growing up on the Jersey Shore. Every single wave is an opportunity, and sometimes you take them and sometimes you don't. Last year I would have classified the wave as not catchable because I was too new and I needed to learn too much when we got to the time of the budget process. Sometimes you can be too late, and the reason the budget is what it is this year is because I think if we wait on some of these items, it'll be too late, and you don't ever want to deal with the whitewater wave because there's no fun. You're not surfing, you're not bodyboarding, you're not doing anything with that. So when the wave is catchable, it's called the sweet spot or a critical wave. Those are some of the more technical terms. And just because I do my best to keep up with semi-obscure pop culture references, I'm going to name the 1987 classic film Back to the Beach, starring Frankie Avalon and Annette Funicello, where Frankie Avalon is in the position of having to capture this major wave called the Humunga Cowabunga from Down Under, which was later stolen by the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, that title. So there's your trivia. Definitely Final Jeopardy worthy, so don't forget that. The next piece is our mission vision, which guides everything we do, as well as our global learning competencies. But when it comes to the budget, I just want to name our core values. The core values are what we expect the adults in the organization to embody, and they're very important to this process. And that is a growth mindset. So having this belief that, yes, we can get better, continuous improvement, we're going to do the things to accomplish that, and we're going to reflect on our practice to continue that cycle. And then speaking of cycle, I hope you have your reading glasses 2.25 or higher. I don't expect you to be able to read that, but what this shows is what our cycle is over the course of the year. And the reason I included this in the slide deck, and it's also in the budget book itself, is we often think of the budget process as being this time from about January to May when the budget is ultimately approved and supported. But for us, it's actually all year long. And we've moved everything up about a month this year. So the budget for next fiscal year for our administrators started in September. So this just goes through what we're looking at over the course of the year. And having a new Chief Operating Officer and Director of Business Services this year, we did an even deeper dive. So as you will notice, the budget is presented in a completely different format, and the entire budget structure is rebuilt from scratch, which was a very impressive undertaking in this year. We evaluated all staff and we put in a new process to really have a verification process of who works where. And that was really in response to questions that this board had, as well as the Board of Education, on FTE count, because the FTE count some were in grants, and it wasn't always clear who is. So this is a baseline year for us, so you can see the number of employees that work in the district, so we'll have a year-to-year comparison that is clear and consistent moving forward. The other piece I'll name on this slide is everything is connected to our strategic coherence plan. Moving on to enrollment, we participated in an enrollment study with the NP Planning Group, and it was presented in June of 2024. And what we know from that report is we're looking at stable enrollment for the next 10 years. And it's good to know, so we're not planning on an increased population or a decreased population. But the other thing of note, this is stable enrollment for the next 10 years after the district enrollment declining about 1,000 students over the past 2 decades. So it's important to know that we have staffed, and the trend that is starting to happen in the state is there's a slight uptick with elementary students. And this is pretty much a consistent trend across the whole state. There's only one district, I believe, that has consistently increased, and that's South Windsor. That continues to grow and grow and grow at a very rapid rate. The other piece with enrollment from this study specifically, the projection shows a low, medium, and high projection, and this is the 10th year projection. So if we looked at the low number, we would be down 112 students from right now. The medium is what we use for planning, so that shows 0. And the high would be up 142 students, and that would, just for reference, that's about 56% of the size of Sliney if it was on the high side. This next graphic just shows our enrollment by school, most notably the elementary differences. Tisco and Murphy, as you know, are the same footprint of the school. So 365 at Tisco, 319 at Murphy, and Sliney is currently at 252 students. Some other background information to note, this is our current demographic data related to the racial background of students, and we're at 66.3% white students. That's just of note because that's a significant change over the past decade for the community, and that also ties into some other demographic data that we used here. This is a comparison of our Smarter Balanced assessment. Smarter Balanced is our grade 3 through 8 assessment for ELA and math. All 3rd through 8th grade students take this assessment. And this comparison here shows how we performed in comparison to the DERG. So Connecticut is broken into several DERGs. We're DERG D, and DERGs are determined by socioeconomic status, the college education level of the parents, and other items like the poverty level and the number of English learners. So those are all factors that contribute to where different towns are placed in their reference group. The goal that I put on the table last year in my first year was I would expect that Branford is performing in the top 3rd of the DERG in all categories. And right now in SBA on the left, that's you can see we're the red. So we're at the bottom of the middle there, and we are similar bottom of the middle as well for math. And when you look at SAT, we are currently in the bottom 3rd in ELA and in the bottom 3rd of math. And while we hope we see some movement moving forward, we still have some critical moves to make before there's significant changes. This is also just a level set of comparing the changes in our high needs population. So if we look at multilingual learners, those are currently our count is we have 194 students where English is not the primary language they speak at home. That's a 7.6% of the population, which is a 3.8% increase when you compare it to 10 years ago. That is very dramatic for any community. That's a very big swing. Our special education identification is 15.4% compared to 13.3%. Free and reduced lunch, this is also a very notable change in our data. It's 37.9% right now, so we're getting close to 40% of students qualify for free and reduced lunch compared to 24% of students just 10 years ago in the town. And now place students, we currently have 39, and that compares to 27 10 years ago. That's a relevant statistic when we talk about the cost of out-of-district tuition and transportation. As Mr. Verdun mentioned, so the ask this year is $69,214,640, or a 5.8% increase over last year. Mr. Verdun also mentioned some of the excess cost that comes in. So while it is this number, it feels like perhaps a different number, and that is certainly if the Board of Finance is agreeable to that. This other piece, there's a star of, there's $675,000 is assumed in a non-lapsing account. So starting last year, boards of education can reserve 2% of their operating budget in any given year and pretty much roll it over. Our position as a team and a board is we're not just going to arbitrarily do that without communicating and requesting it through this process. And the request this year is for $675,000 to roll over to next year to help keep the number where we are. This is a breakdown of where the money is going in next year's budget. As you can see, the darker blue and the orange is the salary and benefits alone, and that makes up 75% of the budget overall, which is making it the largest driver of the budget. We do have some budget pressures. The first one is a known, which was the transportation contract. This is our last year of a large increase. It stabilizes after this, but it is 9.76% in year 2. And we also have an electric rate increase of about 30%. Our labor contracts, our GWI, is about a 4% across the board. And the special education out of district is an increase of 15.7%, which of all of these, what is known and what is unknown, the special education was a large driver because that was an unknown as we went into this season. And that is largely because the combination of tuition rates really skyrocketing and the number of students requiring support that we are unable to provide in the district. With that, our budget goals for this budget on the Board of Education side were, number one was about how can we prioritize student learning and achievement, because that is certainly a goal. Creating conditions to enhance safety and security for students and staff, and we want to address the increasing demands of the continuum of student support services across the board. And despite those constraints, we're still trying to do things to actually improve the system. And I know this is with the re-eval year, I know it's come up that this is really the year to ask for new things. My responsibility is to put forth a responsible budget and make sure that we're moving the district forward. So anything that is new, and you'll see this later, we did try to pay for through reductions. So there's about $1.7 million in new requests, new spending, and $1.7 million in reductions. These are some of the investments in teaching and learning specifically. One of them you'll see across right away is math programming, which directly aligns to our current math performance. So we're looking at a new math program at the elementary level and 2 math interventionists, one at Slaney, one at Tisco to support the new math program. We already have an additional interventionist at Murphy, so we're not requesting another position added there. The new and updated courses, this is not necessarily a big driver of the budget, but it's important to note that we have 8 new courses at the high school that are really enhancing programming there. Mr. Panagoulias was responsive and working with students last year to talk about, well, what is it that you want to do? What are you going to pursue after high school? And looking at not only the college pathway, but career pathways. And what can we do a better job at providing to make that happen? So we will have a CNA program that is launching next year. That's a part of a larger I'll call it a cognate, this big idea of health professions that we're trying to build out. So a CNA, you can finish high school and go right into the workforce. And we're also looking at more advanced math and science courses. So if someone wants to be on a pre-med track, yes, you can also take these courses related to health professions and be on a college path as well. So we're making some exciting changes there. I'll skip over Leader in Me. I'm talking about that on the next slide. As always, professional development and textbook purchases are a driver. Athletics uniform replacement cycle. And this budget also does address summer school. And the way we are addressing summer school in this budget, just to be clear, and we have notified the community, we're greatly scaling back what summer programming has been. So during the few years of our ESSER funding, a very large portion of those dollars went to summer programming, upwards of $500,000 a year. And that was something we just couldn't sustain without that level of funding. So we did a lot of data analysis about which programs have the highest return on the investment, and those are the programs we preserved moving forward. Leader in Me, I did want to call this out because it's a shift in really trying to build on the assets, the strengths of our students. If you look at the 7 items on the right, you might have a flashback. I'm having 80s night today. 1989, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. If you remember that great work by Stephen Covey, the 7 Habits really started in corporate world, business world. They were adopted by the Air Force Academy as well. And one day, a principal happened to hear Stephen Covey speak, and she went up to him and said, "Have you ever thought about what this would look like in a school?" And he said, "No, I haven't. Why don't you try it and let me know how it goes?" So this person did, and Leader in Me has evolved over about the past 15 years, and it is a great program that really focuses on 2 pieces. It's people hear Leader in Me and they think of, well, maybe not everyone is a leader. It's not just about leading others. It's about what you need to do to be a leader in the self. So it's about the self and others, and it will be an exciting way to address some of the challenges that we face. We are also moving to a full-day preschool program next year, and preschool is all about high-quality early learning as early as we can get it. The earlier we have students, the better positioned we are going to be for their success in kindergarten and beyond. So we're very excited about the change. We anticipated a revenue of about $200,000 in our calculations, and we've already exceeded that in registration so far. So registration's going well, and we also made a promise to the Board of Ed that we're not saying no to anyone. If people keep registering and we have enough students to fill a class, we will open another section of preschool as well. So we're very excited with that new program. Another investment in teaching and learning is we're adding, assistant principals are becoming house principals because we're trying to do a little bit of rebranding and change the feel and shrink the size, in theory, of what it feels like to be a student at Walsh and the high school. And these extra positions will they will work closely with the school counselor and the family, so every student, regardless of their standing, can have a student success profile and have close attention, and we can increase communication. I also want to note that these are not 2 added administrative positions. There's a reduction of 2 other administrative positions in order to make these happen. So when I mentioned the 1.7 million in new is paid for with the 1.7 in reductions, this is one of those examples. The other, yes, discipline is certainly probably one of the things I hear about most, and something that takes up quite a bit of time of our administrators. But the other thing that happened, I know I point to October 21st, it was my least favorite day of this year. That's the day that we had the Dunkin' Donuts incident outside of high school, and Branford was not cast in a great light on that day, and it caused us to do a lot of reflection and think about how do we want to move forward. So some of these security asks do exactly that, and our goal is always to enhance and improve security, and as we're doing that, we're trying to minimize risk, maximize defense, but also not deteriorate the social fabric of how it feels to be in school. So there's a fine balance of what are the things that we can do and what is needed to make those things happen. So this budget, last year, you might remember, we made all of our security positions full-time. We had a bunch of part-time employees, and so we didn't have a sense of a good department, not really clear standard operating procedures. And now as we're moving forward, we have a director of security in this budget to really oversee the department, provide the necessary training, and really work to refine those standard operating procedures. They would also liaise closely with the police department and the fire department, who've just been incredible partners as well. The other investment that I mentioned is with student support services. I will say Charles and Deannabelle have really been incredible. They're the two administrators of the program who have provided oversight of the program for many years. The needs of the special education population have just increased tremendously everywhere across the state, and this is one of the most important pieces of the budget, is adding a director of specialized instruction to help manage those increased expectations. The other investments in the student support services, we're eliminating an outsourced position, and we are realigning the management structure, as I mentioned. And the goal is with the position is to explore possibilities of, okay, let's look at the students that are outplaced. Is there potential to build some programs in-house so we can bring some students back, which would greatly reduce the cost of some of those outplacements. This is a step graph that just shows, it starts all the way to the left. If you look at 65.4 million, that's where we started this year, and that's with the 4% increase from the previous fiscal year. And the next green block shows the general wage increase and step increase of the contracts. And then we have benefits, the special education expenses are next. And then we're using the word catch up. It's not the best word to use because investment doesn't do it justice either. And I don't want anything that I say on the next few slides to make it sound like the town is not appropriately invested in education, because it is very clear that this board and all boards have certainly done justice to the program. But some things just weren't asked for, and it might be because they didn't feel like they were needed. But if they were asked for, I would make some assumptions that they would have been granted. That red that appears at the top shows the 1.7 million in reduction and the 1.7 increase as well. And so that gets us to the 5.8 request for next year. This is another glance of the wage increases, and the benefits are 52% of the increase. If you add the special education increases, that's an additional 19% right off the bat. This 10-year history, it shows from 2016 to this request, that 4% really is representing a general wage increase, and the request for this year shows that we're above that. And as I mentioned, with the history of how the boards have supported it, for the most part, with very few exceptions, the Board of Education budget received what it asked for. There aren't too many exceptions where that's not the case. So when I'm saying underfunding, it's not underfunding as you weren't giving what was asked for. It just wasn't enough money to keep up with what was happening with the economy. So with pre-COVID days, you can see that we were pretty much in line with inflation, and no purchasing power was lost. As time goes on, the gap just continues to show the budget's increasing at a rate that's not keeping up with inflation. And in part, that happened because there was all of this money coming in from other grants due to COVID. And then we are where we are now, which we're calling catching up. Put us at about a $5 million deficit, which is not the best word either, but I hope you know what I mean there. And this budget closes that gap by about $2 million. Again, putting us at the 5.8% ask. And that's operating. Would you like me to pause there before I go to capital?
Yes, thanks. Okay, questions on the operating budget, Board of Ed? Could you expand a little bit on the catch-up piece of it? I know it's broken down, but and maybe also the other part of the question would be, how many FTEs are we adding in this budget?
So the catch-up, when we're talking about curriculum, athletics, and preschool, those are a few places that, and I'll say largely because ESSER funding did offset some of these, not enough money was being invested to keep up with the needs. And once those grants were gone, we can't keep up with, we can't deliver the level of programming we need to without the funds that were there. It's the easiest way to say it. Do you want to?
The other thing too is, and I'm not sure what's going on with my voice, but is that a lot of the accounts were being subsidized already, so there's already a negative in the actuals, and so some of the spending was occurring and subsidizing it from other portions of the budget where we're kind of decreasing, especially in this budget where the Board of Ed is kind of thinning out our capacity in like vacancy assumptions. That was largely carrying a lot of these accounts.
So you're saying it's a tighter budget?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, in theory.
And how many FTEs are we adding in this budget?
It's a little bit hard to say because we did all of this FTE adjustment.
I know, you're kind of a little, so maybe whatever number you have, I guess, is good for now.
So our administrative headcount, and this is not across all administrators, whether it's a union administrator or not administrators, we're up 1, and our teacher headcount was up 2.
Okay.
And our para headcount is down probably 2, if not 3.
And, you know, I've seen some articles and such about, you know, how performance really is an important, teacher performance, I think, is very important to student performance. And, you know, across the nation, there's been some studies in different cities about, you know, kind of trying to address that. Have you looked at how any of that system, either whether or not it's merit or it's other performance measures, might influence the outcomes of the students?
That's a great question. So the item with the highest impact on student achievement is the teacher that's in the classroom. That's one of the things we know for sure from educational research. We have a new instructional framework this year based on the new art and science of teaching that was rolled out because the state totally changed the teacher evaluation and feedback system. So as part of legislative, the legislature last year, we had to create a new evaluation system this year. So that's in place for the first time. So we have an entirely new framework and a new system for providing feedback. As far as merit pay, that's pretty much a state by state matter. The closest thing to it is you might find some districts that have some type of stipend incentive for teachers through a contract, but it's pretty rare in Connecticut especially.
Okay, and as far as any tumble down from the federal changes at the federal level, do you anticipate those impacting next year's budget?
Right now, I don't. It's an interesting day to say it, since today that there was an executive order to, I don't know, was dismantle the word? I want to use the correct word, to dismantle the Department of Education. There was also a line that most media outlets did not pick up. It's without interruption to student services. So those are 2 very interesting things to happen within 1 or 2 sentences. But our understanding, and I was actually with the commissioner today, the former Secretary of Education, Miguel Cardona, was with us today today was the Connecticut Superintendent's Conference. So I don't hang out with them on the regular, but I just saw them today as this was all happening. And the interesting part about it is states have always had most of the autonomy of how local school districts are running, and the local municipality even more so. The concern with this, just from an operational side, is obviously federal grant funding, especially Titles 1, 2, and IDEA funding. Those are big dollars for us, and more or less the assurance that people were feeling today was that will not be disrupted. The other things, just in case people are curious about what else does the Federal Department of Education do, it's things like Pell Grants and FAFSA, so things that do affect families. But all of those services in the executive order are going out to other places.
And the continuing resolution that just passed includes funding for IDEA and Title I, as is at the FY25 funding level. So it'll be a flat funded level. Those are our two biggest grants. And then the risk would be like Title II, III, and IV, which left the discretion to the president. But that's like about $75,000 in comparison to the few million, that we get in the other grants.
Okay, thanks. And my final question was, Jamie, I see that you signed on to a petition, I think, to the legislature with regards to full funding of the student funding mechanism. Do you have any input on that, or do you have any hope that the legislature is going to fully fund according to the statute?
Well, that was the ask.
Yeah.
But no, there was a letter that was circulated around the community, just ensuring that it was fully funded. I did sign on to that letter requesting. Haven't, obviously, at this time, we don't know what's going to happen, but that's our COG and actually throughout the greater New Haven region, all the towns pretty much signed on.
Okay. And you're aware of the request to fully fund the ECS or whatever, but chances are probably slim, but at least the ask is there.
Yeah, I think fully fund is unlikely, but there's more pressure than there's ever been. So I think something could happen, so that's good.
Thank you. Questions from the board on the budget? Pam?
Just curious about the contracts that were settled and how staffing or retraction or retention rates, are things stable with teachers?
Yes, we have. But I think I've said this before too. We have incredible retention with our teachers and admin. We posted some anticipated vacancies as we're looking ahead to next year, and we're seeing more applications come in than we've seen in a long time for some positions. So that's all very exciting.
Okay. Other questions from board members?
Jeff. Thank you. Nice presentation this year. It was well thought out. A couple things as I run through some of the line items. Payments for special projects. Looks like I knew a line item this year for 148. What does that entail? Page 22, please.
Yeah, I have that description here. So page 22, you're looking at. That is a reclassification from contractual payments 51110, so you'll see that it's coming down by 39%. And so the funding part of that reclassification is into this new bucket for special projects.
That's part of your reorganization.
What I'll do is I brought with me every object code with an explanation of the change, and I highlighted every accounting change in here so you can see which ones are accounting changes, because you'll see a lot of accounting changes throughout the book.
Okay, thank you. Mileage reimbursements up on page 23, about $8,000. I mean, gas prices are stable about $2.93 right now. It's consolidation.
Yeah, it's largely an account change that's defining that this is the one account that we will be using. It takes into account a small increase in the IRS rate, but the main reason is we had very poor definitions of the chart of accounts, and so we simplified and clarified what buckets should be for what, similar to how you guys would operate your chart of accounts.
Thank you. And one last thing regarding transportation, your new contract is working out very well from what I read, and the small buses are electrified, and you anticipate the larger buses to be electrified next year. Is that true in the comments?
School 27.
School 27.
27, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, other questions on the operating side? Questions from members of the public or our RTM members? Frank?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Frank Tuho, RTM First District. I chaired the Education Committee for 9 years, from 2003-5, 2013 through 2020. I support the budget before you today, the operating education budget as proposed. Now, you've been told by Dr. Tranberg, which is true, that it's a 5.8% increase in the operating. But when you take into effect the state grants, it's really only a 4.6% increase on taxpayers. And of that, 1.3% is the increase in special ed and transportation. The other thing, which is a big highlight, as Dr. Tranberg said, right, it's 1.7 more in spending, but it's also 1.7% in reductions. So they did an excellent job in keeping the budget, reasonable, and it should be approved. Also, on March 10th, Blaze was on the phone at the Education Committee, the RTM Education Committee, and everyone learned at that time from Blaze that an additional $196,000 in special ed excess costs was approved that day. So Branford's going to get $300,000 plus an additional $496,000. So that should reduce the cost to the taxpayers down below 4.6%. So I support the budget as proposed tonight. There's a lot of excellent new things, without adding extra cost to Branford Public Schools, including, as Dr. Tranberg said, 8 new BHS courses, some of which I would consider to be vocational. I mean, our students don't all go to college, and when they graduate from high school, they should be able to get a job with skills learned at the high school, in my opinion. And this calls, the old days, right, we had the woodworking shop and the automotive shop, and you could get training in that. But I don't believe there's much vocational now, except maybe food service, which has always been there. But this budget proposes, as Dr. Tranberg said, a CNA program. You can graduate from Branford, take the CNA exam and earn good money. Also, the honors pre-college program is, there in the budget. There's an expanded UConn offering. The other thing, too, there's an EMT program proposed. That's another great program for people to, learn in high school. Then they can graduate and take the EMT course. This is all very important to the Branford student. Also, full-day tuition for pre-K, all tuition-based, based on a sliding scale, will take place, at the Indian Neck. That's been proven to greatly strengthen, preschoolers. That's in the budget. 2 math interventionists to be added. A Leader in Me, which Dr. Tranberg described. It implements the district with that book. As he mentioned, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. It's going to be implemented district-wide. It creates a director of security to ensure we have a safe learning environment in our public schools. It also creates a director of special instruction. Currently, Mr. Ciccarelli has 20 special ed teachers reporting just to him. I mean, he needs help. He needs help with that special ed programs, so this will give him some help. As we were told, the high school and Walsh are going to move to the house principal model. As Dr. Tranberg said, it's going to increase the assistant superintendents in both schools to 3 from 2, but it's not increasing the number because he's cutting back 2 other positions. Then also, Branford Branford Public Schools have enjoyed for many, many years a youth detective stationed right on at Walsh. But under Dr. Tranberg, the youth detective will become a full officer, and that'll provide even greater security to our students. Other points to consider in your budget deliberations are that, as Dr. Tranberg said, and when I saw this at his superintendent's presentation in late January, I was shocked. We are not in our DIRG where we should be. He showed some slides. We're in the middle of some DIRGs. We're in the lower third of another DIRG. Branford and Branford students, should be doing better. We have to give them the means to improve. So with those points and those considerations, I ask you to please pass the budget as proposed. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. Other questions or comments? John?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. John Hartwell, District 5. I just wanted to follow up on something Frank touched on with the positioning of the schools in the DIRG in the various areas. And I know that this is a very important thing for you. I was at that same presentation in January. It's clear that Branford schools need to rate higher. And I know that that is not something that you can do overnight. But I think it is fair to ask, what sort of trajectory would you hope to achieve with this budget and future budgets? So how could we, as a community, over time, look at what you do and say, yes, the money that we spent was well done?
That's a great question. I don't think that that's our only indicator of success, right? It happens to be the most public and a big driver of our overall standing in the state. And it's not only this how we score on the raw score, it also takes into account our growth and our students meeting a certain growth level. But that aside, what we're looking at, and I actually presented this to our board last night, we're looking at what steps can we take to become a high reliability organization, to have consistent results over time, and to be predictable, and to take the right actions to address the needs of our students and staff at all times. So we're going to embark on that process starting this spring. We're going to have our Safe School Climate Survey, and from that, we're going a completely different route. It's going to be very data focused, and when we receive those, I think I'll
push the button.
We're dying here. No, I think it's me. I think I'm pushing the button. I'm going to turn it the other way so my finger can't touch the button. So step one is it's focused on a safe, supportive, and collaborative culture, which is the surveying we're doing, and where we're going to create the action plan. So we're focused on that as the foundational level, because that's the prerequisite to everything else. But with this process of becoming a high reliability organization, a high reliability school, a high reliability district, we'll take the same steps for the next level, which is high quality instruction in every classroom, which really gets to Mr. Mooney's question of well, how do you know and what are you doing? So that's phase 2, and phase 3 is a guaranteed and viable curriculum. So no matter who the students have as a teacher, are they going to have the same experience of what can be learned and should be learned across each grade level? So that's kind of our next 3-year roadmap, and we're using specifically called high reliability schools, which is very data driven, very research based, in order to create an action plan to do that. So that's the 3-year plan.
And I would assume that part of being a high reliability school is to have the right level of staffing and the least turnover in the areas where you don't want it to be.
Exactly.
How are you doing in that regard?
Well, I would say the organization looks a lot different in just a year and a half. And so some people retire, some people move on, and if there's a balance, right? You have to find, are people comfortable with the vision and where we're going in the strategic coherence plan? Because I don't think you're going to find a move we're trying to make in this budget that's not articulated in the strategic coherence plan. So if you work here and you're part of this organization, that's what you're agreeing to do, and that's been the message.
And finally, the inputs here are children. and your prognostication is that the number of children is going to remain relatively stable. But what I did hear was that over the last 10 years, the composition has changed, and so the number of children who are on support for free lunches, for example, has increased. Is there anything about that trend that you think is going to change? Is that going to be the same? Are we going to see more need for support? And obviously that ties back at the end of the day to what happens at the federal government and the amount of money that may or may not be coming through. And I know you addressed that. We all hope that any changes to the Department of Education are not substantially going to impact the funding that we get. But where are we in terms of student mix, and how do you see that going forward?
So specifically with demographic-related items specifically, we do rely especially on the federal government to allocate appropriate resources to offset that. And I'm hoping that's something we can continue to count on. The other piece is if we address these things like high-quality instruction in every classroom and the guaranteed and viable curriculum, those are also things that are naturally going to address some of our deficits in other ways. The other thing that I'm very aware of is, as a superintendent, I can't come to the Board of Finance and to the RTM asking for a 5.8% every year and expect that that's going to be possible. So I also want to, it's not obvious to everyone, I just want to be clear that yes, I know that that's not sustainable for the community, but I hope that answers your
We've question. Seen tremendous growth in the price of residential housing, which means that people are coming in to the community. Schools clearly is the number one thing. Obviously, we have to be safe, so we need a fire department and a police department and good roads. But I think the thing which most people are going to look at the beginning is the school. And so the question of how we manage that money and get some kind of return. And I like when I keep hearing data-driven, 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 because at the end of the day, we do need to be able to say to the people who pay the taxes that, yes, you're getting bang for the buck here. So.
Yes, and we'll continue to do the enrollment study that we did on a regular basis, because yes, people are moving in, but it also showed that we have an older population of people moving in. So just because people are moving in, they don't necessarily have school-age children.
Yes, this is true. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, other questions or regarding the operating budget of the Board of Ed? Need a mic.
Don't push it. Oh, yeah.
Good evening, Rick Roman, Pheasant Lane here in Branford. So just a couple of things here. Points that are more specific, overarching theme that's more general in nature, but first I'd like to thank Mr. Hartwell. Those are some great questions, and it is refreshing to see a member of the RTM asking questions that I think are pretty on point and relevant under the circumstances that our budget is and our district is. With regard to the specifics, I've handed out a sheet of 15 items, amended public input 2025 to 26 DOE budget. I passed it out to most everybody in the room. I ran out of copies. I'd just like to highlight the needs for these things, and I'd like to just make special mention of 3 of them. Number 3, greater investment in the paraprofessional contract. We continue to have an entity that is under, the compensation is not in line with what there needs to be. Recently, the chief operating officer said that, we had the lowest amount of paraprofessional openings, and he was correct. But it was 7 openings that we had, and that was the lowest by far. We don't have a contract and an agreement that is equitable and beneficial to us or the paraprofessionals. And it needs to change, and it's been that way for a while. Secondly, item number 4, bringing in the SROs from the Branford PD. My understanding is that all of that is going on the police budget. As somebody that constantly advocates for educational improvements, I'm okay with that personally. I would like to see that. But on the flip side, doesn't it perhaps make some sense that both entities enter into this partnership with skin in the game, meaning half of the budget for education, half for police? That would seem equitable, but it's okay by me if it's not. And then lastly, the superintendent has, and the chief operating officer have identified a gap, if you will, a gap that over the years, with this somewhat arbitrary 2% budget, and I guess 4% is the new 2% with inflation and cost of living, et cetera. Over time, that's created a gap. With the budget now on a 4.6% trajectory, that that financial gap or shortfall would be about $4.5 million. I reserve the right to be off on that, but it's still significant. And I'd like to call attention to these things because it's needed, necessary, and relevant. Now, I'm bringing this to your attention. You all are the financial experts. The Board of Ed, they're the educational experts. And, I'm sorry, but there's no way around saying this, and in the interest of being succinct. I feel it's unfair to have to impose more and say to the Board of Finance, hey, you guys need to kind of think outside the box here and understand what's going on with the district and understand where we are and why we're here. I think that's the Board of Ed's job. And the truth is that, look, I've looked at all the meetings. As it relates to this budget, the Board of Ed is not doing what it should be doing, given the specific situation that we're in. We have a new superintendent. He's been here 1 year and 3 quarters. He has 3 reviews under his belt. He's exceeded expectations by any rational measure. He is kicking ass and taking names, okay? Which is exactly what we need, and what there is a lot of pent-up demand for. It would be logical to assume that when you have that, funding would be appropriate for that. They're not going to take it out of their own pockets, okay? There's pent-up demand, there's pent-up need. And, the Board of Ed is not saying, hey, look, we're the advocates, we're the ones that are standing up, we're the ones that are saying we appreciate your guidance, but this is what we need, this is why we need it. That's not happening. And it creates an adverse spillover effect. Now, let me close by saying there's a positive and there's a concern about doing things right and doing things wrong. Doing things right, the The positive is we can get on this wave that Dr. Tramberg talks about, okay, in terms of the budget. We can do something meaningful for years and years of apathy and neglect, okay, and move the ball in the right direction. We brought on a new superintendent to be an advocate for change and raise the bar. We did not bring him on board to run in place and maintain the status quo. He, in turn, has brought in people to help with that change. Now, I'm a recruiter, as you all know. Let me tell you what happens when somebody is brought on board to be a change agent and to create this wave, if you will. But there's no ocean for the wave, all right? It's more like a lake or a pond, right? You can't have a wave from that. My experience is that people that are brought on board to be change agents and raise the bar and not be given maximum opportunity and maximum commitment to do so, they usually don't hang around that long. Nor should they, all right? And I'm not saying, please understand, I'm not saying that Chris Tramberg is sending his resume all over the place. I am not making those assertions or anything like that. I just know that when somebody goes somewhere and somebody who's highly marketable and who's been exceeding expectations and is not getting commitment in the form of what he or she needs to get the job done, they become receptive to outside opportunities. Okay? They might not necessarily be sending their resume on Indeed or any of these other job boards, but somebody calls them, you think they're going to say, no, I'm not interested in what you're saying? They're going to say, yeah, I'll listen. And then once the itch is created, the need to scratch, okay, becomes part of the process. So what I'm saying is that there's a risk versus reward ratio here, okay, to put it in financial terms for you all, okay? There's a reward for doing things right. There's a risk in running in place. And I would like to respectfully suggest that you all take this into account. And again, I made these same comments to the Board of Ed. The Board of Ed did what they did, and they're on the defensive in this whole budget process. They're not advocating for change. I think Mr. Verdun and Dr. Tramberg have a great partnership. I don't think the budget process is serving that partnership as positively as it could and should. And therefore, I ask you all to kind of think outside the paradigm, okay? Because it's a very different situation that we're in. The solution to a situation that is very different is going to be a solution that is also very different. So please keep this in mind, and thank you, and have a good evening.
Thank you for your comments. Any other questions or comments from the public here or our team members? Okay, if not, we're going to shift on to capital. In advance of the presentation, Chris or Blaze, Jim, was going to give me an update, give us an update, based on some of the conversations that we've had together. So, Jim, do you want to just cover some of the common thoughts that we had talked about?
Yes. Yeah, thank you, Joe. What I wanted to do is kind of follow up with kind of what's happened since the original capital request was submitted. This is something we've been aware of, something we've been discussing. The board may recall in my March 13th letter to you, I talked about some of the budget highlights, and I did mention that the Board of Ed's capital request is a significant cost to the taxpayer. under which the present pay-as-you-go format, and just for folks at home, pay-as-you-go means we're taxing for it and we're basically spending it or setting aside in the current year. The opposite approach would be borrowing money and then paying it off over time. And so I said, I suspect we will need to find a suitable alternative, which may include a combination of bonding and obviously deferrals. And then in February, when we were talking about budget strategies, I mentioned when we were supplementing some of the other Board of Ed items, the lease fund, for example, and special ed, as it related to capital, I said the town is working with the Board of Ed. And when I say the Board of Ed, I'm really talking about the central office staff. So just I know the Board of Ed and the staff are effectively different. And I said we're working with the Board of Ed and Bond Council to determine how to best supplement the Board of Ed's capital request. And we have to consider what's most likely to be completed in the next fiscal year, but we also don't want to negatively impact the facility study. So the obvious question is, well, then where do you go from here? And in these conversations, working with the Board of Ed, we're discussing some guidance for this process. And our suggestion was to fund or consider an amount of $600,000, excluding the leases and excluding the town's payment into the lease fund, which represents an increase over the prior year of $496,000. As the board knows, and as the RTM is also aware, the Board of Ed has about 26 capital projects. And so if this is a suitable framework, then perhaps the Board of Ed, if this board is amenable to that, might want to focus on the items that might fill that $600,000 bucket, and then we wouldn't have to spend a lot of time on the other items. The RTM wants to hear all the other items. Obviously, you have your own committee meetings, and that might be a good venue for that. And then the other development that's occurred, other two developments really, is the technology leases. And with the price of some things going up a lot, primarily technology, we were looking at the lease request. And when I'm talking about the lease request in this context, I'm talking about the amount that the Board of Finance would appropriate in one of their budget resolutions. So just to go back in history, what the Board of Finance does, and then the RTM ultimately acts on it as well, is we approve an amount which allows the town to enter into a lease. So think of it similar to a bond authorization. That's the amount that we're borrowing. Typically that amount is the present value of the future lease payments. And then the payments out of the lease fund, of which the Board of Ed, I believe, still has $250,000 in their budget. The town is requesting $170,000. Those actually make the lease payments for the new leases and existing leases. And so I believe, and also talking with the Board of Ed, that we're going to have to increase that amount from the $676,000 to roughly $800,000. And so our present estimate is given those leases with a small margin for an increase that should be suitable. And then the other question would be, well, how does that affect what's being budgeted for payments? And the town's on the town lease end part, there is an increase, and the Board of Finance and the RTM may recall that at the February meeting, and I think your meeting last week, you also increased contributions into the lease fund to make those payments. And the last thing I'll mention that's been going on, which impacts the capital, not necessarily tonight, but since we'll be meeting in probably another 2 weeks or so, I think it's important to mention, and that is the skylights at the high school cafeteria are in need of basically being fixed and replaced. And so there is a bid that's currently out on the street for that. And we understand that it's subject to the funding being available, but because it is out on the street and because it is something that needs to be done in this next year, the Board of Ed will be making a request to the Board of Finance, and I've worked with Bond Council, and so what we will be doing is a bond authorization for that. So those are some things that impact the capital and some developments that have occurred since this book was published. So I just wanted to sort of set the framework and make folks in the room, Board of Finance, et cetera, aware of that. And with that, I'll turn it back to you, Mr. Chairman, and the board.
Thanks. So not the short circuit, but that, I think part of the concept is that we know there's the master planning project that's out there for schools. We also know that there may be some other requirements that need to be bundled into a debt package at some point in time, but at least to kind of give an idea as to what we're looking at for in order to fund out of taxation, at least at this point in time. But with that, you can proceed with the presentation.
I won't say much. I'll say thank you. Like I said, I don't want anything to seem like it was an accusation of underfunding, because the creative problem solving that comes from Jim especially is such a pleasure to work with and work through some challenges. They're just very much appreciated on our part, and we thank you, and as always, thank you for the obscure references. I look forward to them on the regular. For capital budget, I'll talk about some changes that we made, and this just is in line with, we want the budget book to be clear, and we wanted to be more in line with some of the town practices, so we also moved to the 5-year format. Previously, the Board of Ed had 3. We are also anticipating the master facilities plan that should give us this 15 or 20-year big look ahead of what are some of the preventive maintenance things, just so we know what to expect when it comes to those big bucket items. The next page just shows a sample of what you have in your book. So every single project has its own page so you can see what's in our heads right now. And this showed our initial request of $3.1 million for next year, which includes the leasing as well. But that's not where we are, and we understand that. But we are optimistic about the $138 million in fiscal year 29. So looking forward to that.
I think that's the undertow.
He had to say something. So that's good. So questions from the board? I think we understand where we're evolving here. Questions from RTM members or members of the board? Tracy?
Thank you. Tracy Everson, RTM District 5. The Walsh leftovers from the building, is that going to be coming back to the town? Do we have a number on that at this point? Talking about like $1 million or?
Either Blaze or Jim can address some of this. I think some of it is the final closeout of the project.
We'll tag team on this one, if that's okay.
Yeah. Go ahead, Jim.
So Chris has talked about some of our collaborative efforts trying to improve some of the things that we're dealing with in financial challenges. And so both the administration and the Board of Ed leadership has worked very hard over the past probably 3 or 4 months to really get their arms around the status of that application. The state has changed some rules. And also the state's had some, for lack of a better word, scandal with regard to their school construction program. So Greg was talking about impacts on organizations earlier. Usually when you have a scandal in an organization, nobody wants to basically approve anything, right? And so we know that from what we're hearing anyway, is that there's going to be, it's going to be very difficult for folks to give you answers until they see everything in writing. And so under Blaze and Chris's leadership, they did file the application with the state of Connecticut. A lot of it really comes down on how they view what's eligible and what is ineligible. I think another aspect of this in the reporting, at least conceptually, is that it's really 2 projects, right? We think of it as 1 project, 1 appropriation, but in reality, there's 2 projects there. So, and the other thing, too, is in terms of the town's bonding, we did not fully fund the Walsh athletic field project, because we're anticipating that we're going to get some money back for that. And you said how much. I don't want to necessarily throw a number out there, but I guess I will. I'm guessing it's probably somewhere around $2 million. But again, don't necessarily want to count it until we actually receive it. But again, we do have sufficient cash. I know there's a lot of conversation about the town and the fund balance. One of the things I say, but maybe it bears repeating here tonight, is that fund balance basically gives us a large level of liquidity, so that when we actually incur expenses and we don't fully finance them, we're basically able to issue checks without bouncing them, is I guess the polite way of saying it. And so once those dollars come back, we're going to apply that against the project. I mean, we will actually go to the Board of Finance and RTM, because what will happen is those dollars will come into the Walsh project, and then we'll see what the cash impact is. That project will be officially closed. I mean, it is a soft close now. We don't fully close it in the accounting system because we want to recognize the revenue when it comes back. And then from that, those dollars would then get appropriated as a revenue to reduce the bonding, most likely for the Walsh Field project. I think it kind of makes sense. It's the same facility, right? And so I think that would be the plan, and then we would issue, like I said, less debt for that. So I think it's fair to say it's probably in the state's court now, right?
Yeah, we're supposed to get, we filed it in 2 applications, so we should anticipate around $900,000 in hopefully what's the next few months. There's no timeline, they're not helpful, but and then we do a second final closing, and that's your audit period, and that's like 2 years or so. So the legislature capped it at 2 years, it used to be 5.
Thank you. One other question, the skylights. This is for you, Jim, so we'll just, we can stand here together. The skylights and the bonding for that, when do you perceive that may come to us? Is it going to come after the budget process, before?
No, and actually, I guess I'll say, well, Mr. Hartwell's here. This may be part of your Zoom meeting. You had mentioned about the stuff comes before the Board of Finance. Because the March meeting, remember, is a regular Board of Finance meeting, right? So in addition to the budget, they're going to be taking up some items. Some have an impact on the budget traditionally, but there are also any other items that the town is dealing with. And as I said, I think the timing is pretty critical because of where they are with the current bidding. So you would probably be acting on it, Mary Ann, what, probably April then, I would guess?
Yes.
Yeah, so.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments on the capital budget for Board of Ed? I think we're all set. You're all set with your presentations?
Yes.
Okay, so thank you for that. And what I will do is take a vote that from the board that we close the public hearing. If somebody wants to make a motion.
I'll make that motion. I'll second it.
Motion made by Jeff, seconded by Harry. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Yvette.
This program was brought to you in part through the support of the Town of Branford. Watch town meetings and other videos on demand at BranfordTV.org.